evening. At this time, if you would, please silence your cell phones and be advised these proceedings are being recorded. The City Clerk has a Zoom broadcasting announcement to make at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Beginning June 15th, 2020, the City of Grand Terrace reopened its public meetings. Therefore, tonight's meeting of July 28th, 2020 is now open to the public. Please be advised that face masks are required, social distancing will be practiced, and occupancy limits will be enforced. Additionally, pursuant to Section 3 of Executive Order N2920 issued by Governor Newsom on March 17th, tonight's meeting will also be conducted telephonically through Zoom and broadcast live on the city's website and Channel 3. If you would like to participate telephonically and speak on an agenda item, you can access the meeting by dialing *67-1669-900-9128 and enter meeting ID number 863-7245-2066 and enter password 337994. You will be placed in the waiting room muted until it is your turn to speak. You may also submit your comments by sending them to ccpubliccomment@grandterrace-ca.gov. The City of Grand Terrace thanks you for taking all precautions to prevent spreading COVID-19.
Thank you. And if you are here with us in chambers and you desire to address the City Council during the meeting, please complete a request to speak form. They are available at the front entrance, and you will need to present it to our City Clerk. Speakers will be called upon at the appropriate time, and each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. This time, I will call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Grand Terrace for July 28th, 2020. And please keep in mind that tonight we will be closing our meeting in memory of Jesse David Rodriguez, who is the brother of our council member Sylvia Robles. So please keep her family in your thoughts and prayers. And while you're doing that, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allen,
Present.
Councilmember Hesse,
Present.
Councilmember Robles,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
I am here.
Mayor McNabeau.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight we have a special presentation of Fire Prevention Zone 5 expansion. Miss Natalie, is it Zook? Natalie Zook from Red Brennan Group. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the Grand Terrace City Council. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Natalie Zook, and I am presenting to you today on behalf of the Red Brennan Group. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself first and why this organization and this county means so much to me. My grandparents, much like many others, moved to San Bernardino County during the post-World War II housing boom of the 1950s. I was born and raised in Redlands. I attended San Francisco State University, where I got my bachelor's degree in political science and my minor in history. My roommate in college attended Terrace Hills Middle School when she was younger, and she grew up here. So she was the first one to introduce me to Grand Terrace and show me all the cool spots. Rosie's down the street is one of my all-time favorite burrito places, and I enjoy a nice warm bowl of Kaz ramen on a cold day. Needless to say, this is my territory and this is my home. I've been working with the Red Brennan Group now for about 1 year. I started out as a signature gatherer for them, where I canvassed neighborhoods and parking lots far and wide, including Grand Terrace, where I really got a chance to know the community. This was my first county-wide campaign, and prior to this, I had worked on national campaigns and more local-level elections, such as city council and mayoral races. Next slide, please. So for starters, what is Fire Protection Zone 5? FP5 was originally implemented back in 2006 in the small desert community of Helendale, which is about 60 or 75 miles north of here, depending on which freeway you take. In October of 2018, the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors voted to expand the FP5 zone to include all unincorporated portions of San Bernardino County, along with some incorporated portions as well. The city of Grand Terrace, because they use county fire department services and contract with them, they were included in that. Next slide, please. Now, back in 2006, the community of Helendale decided that they needed to expand their fire protection services in order to accommodate their population better. It's a big retirement community, and they have a large elderly population there, so the community service district wanted to ensure that their citizens were well protected in the event of an emergency. So after talking to their residents at the Silver Lakes Association and their neighbors, the community was able to come up with a solution, and that solution was to be called Improvement Zone FP5. It formally established a relationship with the San Bernardino County Fire Department, and it was to encompass a little over 5 square miles of territory within the Helendale community. There was a stipulation in the improvement zone that said a special tax was to be included. The residents of Helendale were aware of this, and they got to vote on it. Originally, that tax was set at $117 annually, with up to a 3% annual increase as needed. So this was originally implemented by 1,022 voters in Helendale. And here you have a special notice sent out from the Registrar of Voters back in April of 2006, just informing them that this is in fact a special tax and that it would have to be approved by a 2/3 vote. Next slide, please. So state law provides that a special tax can only be imposed if 2/3 of the voters registered within a certain area vote on it. So this was originally implemented back in 1996 with Prop 218, better known as the Right to Vote on Taxes Act, and this formally established Article 13C, Section 2D of the California Constitution, which states that no local government may impose, increase, or extend any special tax unless and until that tax is submitted to the electorate and approved by a 2/3 vote. Next slide, please. So in 2008, the Improvement Zone 5 was renamed to Fire Protection Zone 5, and the San Bernardino County Fire Protection District was formally established via a process with LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission. Grand Terrace was entered into this and would now be included in the East Valley Service Zone, which is Division 2. And it was one of 4 fire service zones the county established when creating the Fire Protection District. Prior to this, the city of Grand Terrace had contracted their fire services through the county with the California Department of Forestry, and the responsibility of the fire services stayed with the county after Grand Terrace ended that contract with the Department of Forestry, meaning that the Board of Supervisors, who act as the governing body of the San Bernardino County Fire Department, essentially retain control over fire services for the city of Grand Terrace. Now, according to the county and the fire chief, the Fire Protection District is a legally separate entity from the county. However, the 5-member Board of Supervisors acts as the official voting body for the fire board. So the lines may be a bit blurred there. Next slide, please. In 2016 and 2017, respectively, through the LAFCO annexation process, the cities of San Bernardino, Upland, Needles, and 29 Palms entered into the FP5 zone, expanding it from Helendale to now include these 3 cities as well. In those certificates of completion provided and signed by LAFCO and county administrators is a stipulation which states that all previously authorized charges, fees, assessments, and/or taxes currently in effect in San Bernardino County Fire Protection District FP5 shall be extended to the annexing territory in the same manner as provided pursuant to Government Code Section 56886T, which is essentially how we have this special tax that originally started in the small community of Helendale, which encompassed a little over 5 square miles, implemented countywide. Also included in these certificates of completion is the statement that the change of organization was ordered without an election. So originally, 1,022 voters voted on this, and this fire service tax was now imposed on over 1 million residents. Fast forward to June 12th of 2018, the San Bernardino County Fire Department was running a budget shortfall of $29 million, and to make up for this, the fire chief at the time proposed an expansion of the FP5 zone. On August 7th of 2018, the City Council of Grand Terrace held a special meeting pertaining to that expansion, in which the county fire chief presented to the council. Next slide, please. So on October 16th of 2018, the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 to expand FP5 over 19,000 square miles to include all unincorporated portions of San Bernardino County, minus the small communities of Baker and Yermo. As I stated, Grand Terrace was included in that, as well as the city of Yucca Valley, which now meant that property owners in Grand Terrace would be paying the $157.26 annual fire service tax, subject to the 3% annual increase, and this was included on their property taxes without getting the chance to formally vote on it. Grand Terrace residents first saw the fire tax appear in November of 2019. Then here we just have a slide showing the San Bernardino County Fire Department budget. After 2016, you can see that the budget kind of went up a little bit, and then it continued to increase to $323 million, but the number of fire stations went down. In terms of Grand Terrace and their fire services, I can't speak to whether their response times have gone up or gone down since being included in the FP5 expansion, but I'm sure the fire chief would be willing to, inquire with you guys about that. Next slide, please. So currently, property tax owners in Grand Terrace pay a property tax rate of 1.15%. 10% of that 1.15 goes directly to the San Bernardino County Fire Department. The average home value in Grand Terrace is $373,750. So they pay $4,298 in annual property taxes. 10% of that, as I stated, goes to county fire, on top of the $157.26 fire service tax, for a grand total of $587.07 per parcel, or about $49 per month. And there are 3,900 parcels of land in Grand Terrace, more or less, meaning that the county brings in around $629,000 from FP5 alone. Next slide, please. So according to the fire chief, the money paid into FP5 from residents who live within each of the 4 service zones stays within those zones. So the money Grand Terrace pays into FP5, it stays within the East Valley service zone. It doesn't go to the high desert, it doesn't go to Joshua Tree or Barstow, it stays here. However, whether the money Grand Terrace pays into FP5 gets put directly back into Grand Terrace Fire Service specifically, I'm unsure of, and you would need to ask the fire chief for clarification on that. We have submitted a public inquiry request asking, if the revenue generated from Grand Terrace's FP5, might go towards San Bernardino's fire department or Rialto. So we're waiting to hear back from them on that. And then if you have any further questions, you can check out our website at redbrennan.org, or you can check out the San Bernardino County Fire Department website at sbcfire.org/service-zone-FP-5. And then I will now open the floor to questions from the City Council.
Thank you. I have an initial question, and then I'll open it up to my colleagues and maybe come back. The Red Brennan Group works for who?
The Red Brennan Group works for the citizens of San Bernardino County.
Were you hired by the fire district?
No, I was not hired by any fire district.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Allen. Please unmute, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to know a theoretical question, maybe better suited for the fire chief. That is, if a piece of property that's owned by the same property owner has 2 parcels to it and they are adjacent, are they charged 2 times the $157?
From my knowledge, I believe if you own 2 parcels of land, then you are paying the fire service tax twice. But for further clarification, I'm sure the assistant fire chief would be willing to elaborate on that.
Chief Mejia, would you like to field that question?
If the parcels are contiguous, they're charged only one property tax. So if they're touching it all, we only charge them the once.
Very good. Thank you. That's the answer that's the answer I wanted.
Is that what you
Thank you.
noticed when you received your property bill, Mayor Pro Tem?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay.
Well, that's what I'll check now,
Okay,
just to make sure.
okay. Councilmember Allen, you had a question?
So now I've got two, based on what the chief just answered. So my understanding, though, of that particular circumstance that you just described is that if if a property owner owns two adjacent parcels or more, and they're bordering each other, that they can be charged just the one time, but in order to do that, they have to convert all those parcels into one parcel. That's what I've been told.
It's a simple form to apply for the one tax. So I don't think you have to put them into one property, but you just petition to have just the one tax.
Okay. Because there was some issues from some desert property owners, desert parcels, with water rights and things, giving up water rights. So, but my original question was, and this relates to Grand Terrace, and either one of you are welcome to respond to this. As my concern with the FP5 tax is, it's not that I'm opposed to supporting the fire department, but it's how it's calculated. It's the number of residences that are, or buildings that are on the property that concerns me. And I think that's the unfair part, in that I, having one structure on my parcel, pay the same thing the property owner of a multi-complex apartment unit that's built on one parcel pays. But yet there may be several hundred residences on that one parcel. And so I see this as being something that the county could have calculated out a little bit more fairly. Am I correct in this, or or is this, because this is how it was described to me. This was the big complaint that one of the county supervisors that I spoke with had over this whole issue.
Councilman Allen, if I could answer that question just based off of my knowledge. Let's say you have a business that encompasses 4,000 square feet, and then you have a home that encompasses 800 square feet. That business that takes up 4,000 square feet of land and that home that's 800 square feet are paying the same $157.26 fire tax rate.
Right. Yeah. So, could we have several apartment complexes in this city, and like the Highlands is built on 1 or 2, 3 parcels, something like that. But there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of residences there. Okay, that's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions at this time? Councilmember Hussey, please remember to unmute.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for coming out. But my question, Helendale is also a resort area out in the desert. It's a golf course and has their own lakes, and they have their own HOA. I believe that they voted on this because they can get some of the HOA passes. So it seems like everybody now in San Bernardino County is reaping the reward of paying extra money because of some resort out there in the desert that wants, that can't afford their own fire department. Second of all is like, why, push the tax? And I see that they're $29 million shortfall and they're closing some fire departments. But what else has the fire department did and the county did to cut costs instead of, hitting the taxpayers? Because that's a chunk of change that the residents of Grand Terrace is paying, almost $50 for each household.
If I could address the cutting of fire stations real quick. County Fire has not reduced the number of professional, fully staffed stations. Those station reductions are strictly pay call stations. And due to our inability to have pay call due to training issues and stuff like that, we ended up closing those stations. So County Fire has not closed a fully staffed station.
And then to elaborate on your question, Councilman Hussey, You're correct. 1,022 voters in Helendale voted on this. It met the 2/3 requirement of registered voters in Helendale, but when the county expanded this to include the entirety of unincorporated portions of San Bernardino County, that encompassed, I believe, over 400,000 registered voters. So just to put those numbers into perspective for you.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but that seems for a little illegal as far as, the 2/3 voter majority. We have a small little piece of parcel out there in the desert that's more like a resort out there, because I know I have a lot of people that worked at the federal prison. They go out there and live to tack it on to everybody else, and the county will just assume everybody else wants to do the same thing. And I know, like, when we have to, bring it to the voters to vote on it, and, it doesn't seem right and doesn't seem fair and doesn't seem like it's, in our Constitution to do that anyway. I mean, it just seems like, here you go. I mean, that's the same thing as when my mother had a house up there in Running Springs. Cal Fire from Governor Brown hit everybody else with a special tax from Cal Fire, and you were forced to pay it if you lived up there. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. So it just seems unfair, unjust, and that's my take on it.
What are the next steps with this particular expansion? I know that the Board of Supervisors voted to put on hold the increases. What is the path
Yes.
forward at this time?
That is correct. So at a previous Board of Supervisor meeting, I believe it was in October or November of 2019, the county fire chief proposed the 3% increase that is included in the FP5 fire service tax, and the Board of Supervisors rejected it for this fiscal year, I believe. So in terms of that 3% increase, we don't have to worry about it, at least for this year, just from what I know. And then, as I stated, we gathered over 30,000 signatures from registered voters all throughout the FP5 zone to get this placed on the ballot for voters so that they would have the opportunity to vote on this. The residents of Helendale got the chance to vote on it. Everybody else didn't. So this will be featured on the November 3rd ballot, and Grand Terrace residents will get to vote on whether they would like to repeal this fire service tax or keep it.
All right, thank you. Any further questions at this time? All right. Ms. Zook, I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And Chief Mejia, thank you for your answers. We'll move back to our agenda. Are there any items to be added or removed, or any reordering of the current items on our agenda?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by council at one time without any discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for discussion. Are there any items to be removed? All right. I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the consent calendar.
But I think we're looking for when to approve it.
Approve it, and, okay, approve it.
All right, so there's a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilmember Allen and a second by Councilmember Robles. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey,
Yes.
Councilmember Robles,
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor McNabo.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda. We may request a brief response or a clarification to questions. We may ask staff to respond to questions raised during public comment, and we may request a matter to be agendized for a future meeting. Any request to speak at this time?
No, Madam Mayor, and our guest that is participating has already indicated that they do not want to speak.
All right, thank you very much. So we will close public comment and move on to City Council communications, beginning with Council Member Jeff Allen.
I don't have anything, Mayor. Just stay healthy and stay well. Have a great day.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Bill Hussey.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. And unfortunately, my family last Wednesday was here with the coronavirus. So my son and then my wife, my son's a first responder, so that's how he got it. So we're pretty much quarantining here. I like to say, hats off to Kaiser for everything they have done, Kaiser Hospital. And I went and got tested. I'm negative, but it's a big shock. And then I just want to go over the symptoms, because everybody's wondering about stuff, and our symptoms, we had a very mild case. First, my wife would have just like a sinus pressure headache, a sore throat, and just a small cough. And then it developed into a mild fever and tested and test positive. And then the fever spiked one time and then just fatigue. And then, but we're just blessed. And I thank everybody for their prayers and bringing food over. And I really appreciate it. And once I get done my quarantine, hopefully I can be back in the chamber. So just want to thank everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember Hussey. I hope your family recovers soon. Councilmember Sylvia Robles.
Thank you. I'm not at the beach, I'm at home. That's just a picture. My extremely healthy 76-year-old brother took a fatal fall on July 10th. Never expected to be in the position where we were losing other friends and not able to have services due to COVID. And because he passed away at home, we were unable to even get the body released until today. And I just want to, caution everyone out there, hire a handyman, don't use ladders. This is the second highest cause of deaths in the elderly. And I just want to, get that message out. It's just not worth it in the long run. You lose your life or you suffer fatal head injuries. It's just been a traumatic course. And I want to thank you, Mayor, and the other city council members and all the staff that have sent your condolences or provided any help. It's deeply appreciated, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Robles. Again, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Doug Wilson.
Mayor, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to introduce the Grand Terrace, the bronze Grand Terrace sign at our south entry on Barton Road, along with Councilman Jeff Allen. And I wish somebody would have told me that my hair was standing up when they took the picture, but in the long run, it's a beautiful sign, and I hope everybody keeps their hands off of it and doesn't take it home someplace. Other than that, I echo everything that's been talked about in relation to staying safe and staying home as much as you can. And my wife is still recuperating from her surgery, and so we're keenly aware of the fact that you really have to be safe in this environment. My daughter works down in Kaiser, down in San Diego. She's right on the front line. She wears what I would call a welder's helmet to be able to work. And she's in charge of a whole floor of people. And she reminds us all the time to be careful and how easy it is for you to slip in a bad situation. So anyway, I ask God's blessings upon all of those who are mourning, as well as those who are ill, and as well as those who have yet to be contacted with this stuff. Let's just hope we get through it as soon as possible. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So the thing about July is that there are a number of meetings that go dark. So I don't have any full report. I will just echo the sentiments of Mayor Pro Tem about unveiling our entryway sign. It is a wonderful way to show that we are here. We are the gateway to San Bernardino County, and hopefully our developers will take note that we are now on the map and We are ready to serve, and we are open for business as much as we can be during this time. So we'll move on to our public hearing, of which we have one tonight. We have a hearing of appeals of delinquent refuse, sewer, and rental inspection fees. Todd Nakasaki, management analyst, will be walking us through the public hearing, but we will hear a presentation of the agenda item. We will ask for written communication received. Council members will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff. Public hearing will be open. Applicants' comments, if they have them. We'll hear oral testimony from the public. Applicant will have a chance for rebuttal if necessary. The closing of the public hearing will follow, and the city council will deliberate on the item. So if we could please have a presentation of the agenda item, Mr. Nakasaki.
Good evening, Mayor McNabo, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. Todd Nakasaki, Management Analyst. The staff report supports the 2030 Vision Goal number 1, ensure our fiscal viability by ensuring appropriate cost recovery for services. This public hearing is to discuss the placement of assessment liens on properties with delinquent refuse, sewer, and rental inspection fee accounts. This is reflected in our municipal code in chapters 5.42, 13.08, and 5.80 for refuse, sewer, and the rental property program. Refuse and sewer fees are assessed through our partnership with Burtech and the City of Colton. Burtech oversees the program for residential refuse and sewer collection. The City of Colton oversees the program for commercial sewer collection. And the City of Grand Terrace oversees the program for rental property, which requires payment of annual inspection fees by owners of rental properties. The timeline for delinquent accounts is as follows. On June 22nd, delinquent notices were sent to residents with the assistance of Burtech and the City of Colton via certified mail. On July 13th, a preliminary list reflecting payments not received as of July 3rd was submitted as a preliminary list of special assessments to the county. On July 22nd, a revised list was included in the council meeting agenda for today, reflecting delinquent accounts where payment had not been received as of July 15th. On July 28th, tonight, in your council packet is a revised list of delinquent accounts reflecting payments not received as of July 21st. And the most recent count of total number of delinquent accounts is 234 for residential refuse and sewer, 6 for commercial sewer, and 60 for rental property inspections. On August 10th, a revised list reflecting payments not received as of July 29th will be submitted as the first list of special assessments to the county. And finally, on August 31st, a final list of assessments not received as of August 18th will be submitted as the final corrected list of special assessments to the county. Staff is recommending that council conduct a public hearing to hear appeals of delinquent fees that are proposed for adoption and assessment on the tax rolls of the county tax assessor. If there are no protests to further consider, staff recommends adopting a report of delinquent refuse, sewer, and non-owner occupied rental property program fees, and directing that such delinquent fees be collected on the tax roll and be imposed as an assessment upon property within the City of Grand Terrace. That concludes my report. I have representatives, Mike Erwin and Steve Bradshaw from Burtech here as well to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nakasaki. Madam City Clerk, is there any written communication?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. For the council, do you have questions of staff at this time? Councilmember Hussey.
Thank you, Mr. Nagasaki. All these, I haven't researched it, but I mean, we get this same, this is their annual report, and some of these are pretty high on what the delinquent charges are. Out of all these, are there any of them that are businesses or the apartments that we're getting delinquent reports? Because I consider, you know, like the apartments, I mean, that's a business, and I'm hoping it's not delinquent, you know?
Yes, so Councilmember Hussey, what you'll see is we have 6 commercial sewer accounts on there that are delinquent.
Okay. And then, how high, I mean, because I seen, you know, one in here is for $800 and I think that's the highest one I saw, but how high do we, go on these delinquent charges? We just keep going until they decide to sell the property, or is there anything in the collection agency on this?
So we coordinate with the county to, so that the services are not continued, and that way those fees are not further incurred.
Okay, and that, now, do we send out any, information to these property owners that they're delinquent on anything, or do they just get a surprise when they sell their house? Or you do an annual, you know, hey, pay your bill card or anything like that, monthly, notice or something? Or they just, you know, some of these people just get their bills and throw them away, do you know?
They are sent out in the bi-monthly bills for delinquent trash. I mean, sorry, for the trash. And we did send out a certified mail notifying them of the delinquent accounts and the assessment pending submission to the county.
I remember last year we had a landlord come to our meeting, and he was upset that we put a lien on him because, you know, it's still his property. That as part of our rental agreement, the landlords know that that has to be paid through them if their tenants aren't paying. I mean, we shouldn't be dictating that, but, you know, I know we had a pretty upset landlord last year.
I think the question was, are we letting the landlords know when it's a rental? Is that?
Yes, are we letting the landlords know that the renters aren't paying and they're delinquent on their bills? Because like I said, last year, the landlord was pretty upset.
So,
'Cause
Madam,
he said he had no idea of the situation.
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Mr. Devon?
Councilmember Hussey is referencing last year where a landlord was upset because the person renting the house did not pay the trash bill. He got the service in his name, but ultimately, in the end, as our municipal code says, the property owner is a responsible party for those bills. And so I believe that is still the case, sir, and the landlords should know that in terms of when they originally had the service.
Are the landlords being aware or put on notice too that their property, that their tenants aren't paying the bill? Because a lot of them just get the bill from Burtech and stuff, and the landlords might not even be aware of this. Part of the annual fee to renew their permit to rent the house. I just want to make sure the landlord's aware of it so he doesn't get socked with a big bill.
Yes, sir, and our operator, Burtech, has indicated that the landlord, the property owners are aware when the bills are not being paid. And they can come up and answer any more questions if you have related to trash service if you'd like.
And that's all. I just want to make sure everybody's aware so they're not, you know, get a surprise bill. Thank you.
Councilmember Allen?
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Nagasaki, I just wanted to make sure I'm clear. Councilmember Hussey, in one of his questions, and your response, or he was asking, I think, something about, you know, what happens next, and we're not cutting off their service at any point, are we? Or are we? At any point, does their trash or sewer service get cut off?
No, it does not.
It does not.
Yeah.
I wanted to make, yeah, that's all I need to know.
And so one of the important components to remember regarding these types of services is that the reason why we have this process is that the property, the fees they go on the tax roll.
Right.
And then they have to pay that. And so then the cycle starts all over again the next year. Unlike when some people don't pay those utility bills, you get someone calling, collection person trying to get you to pay, or they cut the services off. This has a transition over to the property tax. There's a lien placed on the property. They pay that when they pay the property taxes, and the cycle starts all over again.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. I just want to make sure I'm clear that, because I thought I had heard that said, but thank you.
All right, the lien that's placed on the property, does it need to be paid within the next property tax cycle? Or it just stays on the property tax bill until it's paid or until the home is sold?
It stays on for 5 years.
And then,
Well, my understanding is that it's paid, it can be on there for 5 years, and at that point in time, they can actually take your property if you don't pay that.
the county could.
Well,
The county could start the process
yes.
of taking the property. Okay. Further questions?
No, let's just say they can foreclose.
Yes.
Thank you.
5 years.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. All right, any further questions? All right, seeing none, I will open the public hearing and ask for the applicant to make their comments if they have any.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Mike Aragon, Vice President with Burtech Waste Industries. I have no comment. I believe City Manager has answered those quite adequately. To further on one of his points with regard to not turning off services, at least from a trash standpoint, I believe it carries over into sewer. But we are on a mandatory service, so that means that we cannot shut off service both residential or commercial, and our only recourse to that is this lien process. So those are the ones that you see on the lien, but no service interruptions. But with that, I'll entertain any questions.
All right, thank
And
you
if
very
not,
much.
thank you, and everybody, we wish the best and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, you too. Are there requests to speak from the public on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
I can learn to understand you, but
All right. So we will not need to have oral testimony, or excuse me, an applicant's rebuttal, so I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for their deliberations. And at this time, I just have one statement, and that is there are cities that put the refuse bill on the property tax bill, and they stop billing directly to the homes. I don't know if they only do it for rental properties, but they do it 100% as part of a property tax bill. So that is also a way that we could consider it in the future. Just something to think about. Councilmember Allen,
I'm prepared to make a motion.
please do.
Yep, I'd like to make a motion to move the recommendation, all four, adopt both resolutions. Do I need to read them?
No, you just stated in the agenda.
Okay. Conduct a public hearing and hear appeals of delinquent fees that are proposed for adoption and assessment on the tax rolls of the county tax assessor, and adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, County of San Bernardino, State of California, adopting a report of delinquent refuse and sewer user fees and directing that such delinquent fees be collected on the tax roll and be imposed as an assessment upon the property within the City of Grand Terrace, and adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, County of San Bernardino, State of California, adopting a report of delinquent non-owner occupied rental property program fees and fines, and directing that such delinquent fees be collected on the tax roll and be imposed as an assessment lien upon property within the City of Grand Terrace, and Approve the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, city and district landscaping and lighting maintenance agreements for collection of special taxes, fees, and assessments fiscal year 2020-21, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Allen, and I have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey,
Yes.
Councilmember Robles,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
and Mayor McNabo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to our new business. Item 6 on your agenda, accept CARES Act funding of $153,425 and authorize expenditures of said funding for COVID-related purposes. Mr. City Manager Harold Duffy.
Yes, Mayor, but Ms. Fortune, Assistant City Manager, will be presenting this particular item.
Excellent.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Cynthia Fortune from the City Manager's Office. As Mayor had mentioned, this is a staff report to accept the Coronavirus and Aid Relief and Economic Security, referred to as the CARES Act, funding of $153,425. Next slide, please. This staff report supports goal number 1, ensuring our fiscal viability through the review and monitoring of receipts and disbursements throughout the operating fiscal year. Next slide, please. So just to provide a little background, Governor Newsom signed the 2021 state budget at the beginning of the year. He directed the state to distribute $9.5 billion in CARES Act funds. And of that $9.5 billion, $500 million were to go to cities and $1.5 billion were to go to counties. Now, these funds can be used to cover expenditures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. For the $500 million that were to be allocated to cities, they had 2 subsections. 225 were to go to cities with a population of over 300,000, provided they had not received a direct allocation from the Federal CARES Act, and 275 million to cities with populations under 300,000. And the caveat was that no city will receive less than 50,000. Next slide, please. So the Department of Finance issued applications to cities so that we could receive our direct allocation. And again, these funds were to be used in responses to the effects of the coronavirus. So that calculation they did roughly turned out to be $12 per resident. And based on that, the city is set to receive $153,000 and change. Thank you. So the Budget Act says that these funds are to be used to support programs, activities, and expenses that promote public health and safety in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I just listed a couple. There were more on the staff report, but that is implementing social distancing guidelines and to offset or reduce COVID-19 related general fund appropriations or expenditures in both fiscal years 1920 and 2021. Next slide, please. So in the staff report, we were proposing several uses of the CARES Act funding. For economic development, $35,000, which I believe the city manager will discuss in further detail at the next staff report. We will be offering local business assistance of $50,000. We will also be offering reimbursements of $48,000. And to promote and to make sure that our staff is healthy and safe, we are going to do rapid quarterly testing of staff. So this is to ensure that since we deal with the public, and staff will include all of City Hall, City Council, and Planning Commissioners, the people participating in, who will be hosting this will come to our site. They will come for the day, test all, and they will do test for the virus and the antibodies, whichever we feel that our staff needs. And the results will be within 24 hours. Antibody testing will be right on the spot. coronavirus results will be the next day. And then we will also be doing public outreach, public education and community outreach for 5,000. If the city manager would like to maybe expand on the others.
Mr. City Manager, did you have further to expand?
I think I can cover that in the next report.
Okay. So then to continue on the next slide, as I mentioned, they have to be used for COVID-19 related expenses. And these expenses would have had to be incurred. They backdate to March 2020 and through October of 2020. And so in addition to that, since we are going to accept the funds, we're also requesting the appropriation of said funds. Next slide, please. That shows a revenue appropriation of the $153,000 and several expenditure accounts to account for what I had just mentioned, to cover the full $153,000. That concludes my report. I will be happy to answer any questions City Council may have.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Fortune. Councilmember Bill Hussey.
Thank you, Ms. Fortune, on that report. On the local business assistance, are we going to make it a way that it's fair through all the businesses? You know, is there going to be a cap on how much the business can get assist? So, because it's 50,000 and, you know, only could go so far, but I just want to make sure that we have a cap, or say if one business needs the money and the other ones needs the money too, you know, that way it just spreads equally. So my question is, are we going to have a cap on each business going to have the assistance?
Well, sir, currently what we were doing tonight is you are placing the proceeds in the different categories. And before we do any program, you'll have to come back and approve those programs. So you'd be able to put any sort of cap and weigh in on the actual program. So we don't have any, at this point in time, we don't have any set determined projects. Every project that comes forward under this category, the council would be approving.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. So, Ms. Fortune, I noticed that it seems like now you folks have already chosen, or you're suggesting where to use the money. One of the concerns that I have for our community, because our kids are not going to be able to go back to school this fall, I'm concerned about, and their schools are going to be taught online. I want to make sure that everybody in our city has access to online services. And I think it would be great if our city could offer, make our city a hotspot for internet, you know. I don't know what that costs. That was going to be if we can't talk about it tonight, then I certainly want it on the next agenda or an upcoming agenda, if we can learn what this kind of service might cost and for us to offer for our residents. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do, sir. Yes, and I would say that, you know, based upon the categories in which the state says that COVID-19 can be used, we can certainly look at that as a possibility, and we should also reach out to the school district and also to the county, because once again, I'll tell you guys that the county has $380 million just for San Bernardino County alone, and I think that what you're referencing of creating a hotspot is something that I think there probably quite a few communities need, and we can certainly look at that as one of the options and bring that back to the council.
Thank you. I could certainly also see how it could be beneficial for our vulnerable or homeless populations, where they could actually access services themselves without having to wait for somebody to come find them and offer them a brochure.
Councilmember Hussey.
Just to weigh in on what Councilmember Allen said, I know that we talked about, Mr. Allen, I'm sure you were there. I don't know if you were there. It was a couple of years ago that the county, or that the school district was talking about making hotspots throughout its jurisdiction. And looking into a Wi-Fi service. So I like what Mr. Duffy said, the county's got all the extra funds. That's something that, it's definitely needed because people don't realize how many households don't have internet and how many of these kids don't have computers. But thanks for bringing that up.
Further questions of staff at this time?
I do.
Councilmember Robles again?
Yeah, I just want to, reiterate with staff is I'm not against a hotspot. What my concerns are, the school district is getting per pupil money, and they're not even having any in-person classes. So I would be interested in partnering, but, asking for something on next agenda is not appropriate this time unless you have a second vote for it. So I would just say, this isn't the part of the time that we say something goes on the agenda. Well, back up. Someone can go on the agenda, but let's kind of keep it a little straighter so we don't get confused on the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Robles. And I will just bring it back to what is on the agenda before us, which is to receive our share of the CARE Act funding, and then consider the appropriation in the segments that are suggested by the staff, but not the particular programs. And so discussion of programs would come at another time. All right, any further questions? Okay, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Thank you. Mr. Bert Sulemajan? Oh, okay. All right, our public speaker says he would rather speak on the next item, so I will hold his card. Don't let me forget. All right, any other requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, so I'll bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
I make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Robles and a second by Councilmember Allen. Will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor McNabo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So we will move on to item number 7, which is authorization to use CARES Act funds towards building permit fees for the development of Taco Bell restaurant on the corner of Barton Road and Vivienda/Commerce Way, and authorization to negotiate economic development agreement for sales tax rebate program for Taco Bell. Mr. City Manager Harold Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. And for the record, G. Harold Duffy, City Manager. This is the Economic Development Program for Taco Bell. On December the 12th, 2019, the Planning Commission approved a 2,080 square foot drive-in restaurant on the corner of Barton Road at the new intersection of Commerce and Vivienda. Before construction permits could be pulled, as you are well aware, the state felt the full impact of COVID-19. In March, the property owner was notified by the franchisee that they would no longer pursue the project. So at that time, the property owner, the city staff, and Taco Bell corporate office met at this location. And we talked about, we were talking about the possibilities of trying to find a new franchisee. We wanted to show the corporate office the site. The corporate office felt that it was a great site, and so they decided to move it over to another franchisee. That franchisee, after doing his due diligence, determined that the cost for the lease, along with the rising construction cost, would make the project be underwater in cash for a number of years. And part of the concern was that on average, a Taco Bell can generate about $1.6 million. But in the beginning of that, it would be about 1.2 in the infancy of the program. And so what staff did was look at the issues between the property owner and the franchisee and looking at what benefits would occur if the city of Grand Terrace actually had a Taco Bell. And so the potential revenue for the city is that if the sales come in at the first year of 1.2 million, that would generate about $12,000 a year in annual sales tax. And then you'd have about $5,500 in property tax, as the current value of the property is about $750,000, and the construction cost for the project is about $2 million. So you'd be taxed on that $2.7 million. So you have a total revenue of $17,500 if this corner were turned into a Taco Bell. If the sales went up to the average of 1.6, you'd end up with an annual revenue stream of about $21,500. So part of our overall program is to look at trying to find a way to entice the franchisee to build at this time in COVID uncertainty. So one of the things that we looked at was our building fees. The part of the due diligence of the franchisee, he looked at the overall cost for building fees. We gave him this is just city building fees of $32,230.94. In addition to that, there's county fees, water fees, sewer fees, and that would be about $60,000 in fees for building permit fees. And so what we were proposing is that we would absorb the building fees as an economic development component. And obviously, based upon these numbers, over a short period of time, we would recoup all of our costs associated with that. If the council approves the payment of the city building fees, Taco Bell would pay approximately $30,000 in other permit fees to other agencies. Then we also had the sales tax rebate program that we offered to the, and what I do is when I meet with these businesses, I tell them that I will advocate to the council for these programs. So they are well aware that the council is the policy body and they make the decisions. And so if we go through this again, where the sales are 1.2 million, sales tax would be $12,000, property tax $5,500, total revenue of $17,500. What this calls for is a rebate. As long as the sales taxes remain below 1.6, we would rebate for up to a 5-year period of $8,300 of our $12,000 in sales tax. With the property, if the Taco Bell generates the average rate of 1.6 million, which I'm very confident it will probably within 3 years at the longest period of time, we would not pay any more incentives, because what the $8,300 represents, it represents the upside of the difference between the lease payment and operating costs for payment of the new construction, and the difference between that and being upside down. Once you get the 1.6, there's no need for any sort of subsidy from that point. And so my proposal was to the franchisee that I would advocate that we would waive the building fees or pay the building fees out of COVID-19 proceeds or redevelopment bond proceeds. And then we would negotiate a sales tax rebate program. So the project total cost estimate is $2 million to build the project. I'm available for any questions the council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. And Mayor Pro Tem Wilson has a question.
Just one question. There appears to be a question whether or not it fits the definition under the COVID funds, whether or not that's going to be paid for or accepted. Why would that be?
Well, part of the COVID funds that came from so when the COVID funds came down from the the CARES Act from the federal government, they listed economic development as one of the components to help spur the economy. So I'm taking that as an opportunity to ask to be able to put this forward. But it is a liberal interpretation of that. And so one of the things that we do have some redevelopment bond proceeds that we have allocated to projects, but they're long-term projects. And so what I wanted to do was they asked the council our first attempt would be to use the COVID-19 proceeds. If not, I would want the authorization to use the redevelopment bond proceeds. And the most important part about that is those bond proceeds can only be used for what they were intended for. And economic development is exactly what those bond proceeds were intended for.
And we have done something similar to that with the Woody circumstance, but that was the full payback. In other words, it was a loan, correct? Or where's our precedent?
Well, no, with the Woody's program is that they have criteria where they have to generate X number of jobs, and they also, and based on the generation of sales tax, they're basically paying us back with the sales tax that they generate. Very similar to this, where Taco Bell opens, they generate revenue. We benefit from it. We don't get the full amount because we're using this as an economic incentive. So it's very similar to the Woody's deal that we did, where the sales tax is the generating factor in terms of paying the debt back.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. So, Mr. Duffy, it's a sales tax rebate of up to $8,300 per year for a 5-year period, or until the sales exceed 1.5 million, correct?
1.6, yes, sir.
Because in here it says 1.5. And on page 138, packet page 138. So,
I'm sorry, it should be 1.6, sir.
okay. On the bottom line, I see it where it says sales, there says, the top line says sales tax rebate $8,300. Underneath it, it says sales tax rebate $21,500.
That's an error on my part, I'm sorry. Well, here's the thing is, there shouldn't be anything there because once they reach the 1.6, there's no sales tax.
Okay, that answered my next question.
Yeah.
So this, okay,
Yeah, so that's
thank you.
Xed out.
So you carried it across all three boxes?
Yeah, cut and paste.
Further questions?
So then so if sales, even in the first year, if sales topped 1.6 or reached 1.6, there would be no.
There would be no rebate required.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
And if we went 10 years without it reaching 1.6 million?
No, if at the 5-year mark, it's just,
Okay, so it's 5 years?
it's 5 years, yes.
Okay. Further questions? All right, we'll open public comment. And I continue to have a speaker slip for Bert Sulemajian. So, Mr. Sulemajian, if you would come forward, please.
Good evening. My name is Bert Sulemajian, 22488 Barton Road. I'm going to kind of say a few words from the small business aspect of this. I have serious concerns about the way that the CARES Act fund, or even the development fund, as Mr. Duffy said right now, that will be spent. Taco Bell wants to open a store here in town, and they're going to spend a few $1 million constructing this. Is $30,000, $35,000 roughly, is that going to make or break them? They're spending a couple of million already. So I don't see that being the enticement to bring them in. And if that's what's going to bring them in, then obviously $35,000 is not going to break their bank. My other question is, which small business has ever been offered this type of an offer? A few years ago, I know another restaurant was offered, as you just said a little while ago. And we have about 10 existing restaurants and eating places, and I guarantee you that none of them were ever offered this type of a deal. And how about the other type of businesses in town, non-restaurants, that have been suffered through the COVID-19 situation? Have any of them been offered any kind of assistance? Probably not. So my concern is not that you offer this money or the $50,000 or whatever that was offered prior to a business. My problem is that this should be offered to every business that comes into town, especially the small businesses. They probably can use the money more than somebody that's spending $3 million, $2 million to construct. So this becomes selectively chosen, I want to say, by city. And it comes across as favoritism. So I have complained in the past, not necessarily publicly, to City Hall about selective enforcement of city ordinances, and this is no different. City offers money and a red carpet for big businesses to come into town just because they have a larger name. Retention of businesses should be the priority, and these funds that are available should not be a secret. Most people don't know about this. By putting it on Facebook or website, nobody looks at it. And if they look at it, well, they have people that do this. They don't do it themselves. So I'm not here asking for money for myself. That's not what I'm here for, or my business. But all businesses have been impacted one way or another by COVID-19. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sulemajan. I appreciate you being here and sharing your perspective. Any further requests to speak during this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to City Council. And I will ask city staff at this time, how do we choose which businesses we extend a helping hand to?
Well, Mayor, it happened in a couple ways. Is that this business actually went through our planning process, where it went through the process where they had an original meeting with staff and all of the utilities. They went to the Planning Commission. The project was approved. And as part of this, a part of our priorities, in the council priorities, this project is listed. So that's one way which we come through the planning process to ensure we shepherd a project to try to get it to be completed. But we would also reach out to groups like the Chamber of Commerce. We reach out to anyone who has a question to us. We would certainly entertain this. You know, I'm in constant contact with multiple businesses throughout the city. And whenever there's an issue, if it's COVID-19 related or any other business related issue, whether it's building permit fees or issues associated with fines or signs or issues of that, we're always available.
Okay. How about to the point of the money being spent for construction and the comparison to another $35,000? How does that end up being the breaking point?
I'm sorry, Mayor.
$35,000 or $32,000 to a company
sure.
that would come in and spend a couple million.
Sure.
Why does that end up being the breaking point?
Well, here's the thing, is that while Taco Bell is a major corporation, they have franchisees, and this franchisee was assigned, well, this is not the original franchisee. That franchisee said, because of COVID-19, we're done with this project. And so we initiated the conversation with the landowner and Taco Bell corporate office. They assigned it to another franchisee, and that franchisee said, I'd like to do the project. COVID-19 is sort of, it's unknown. I'm running the numbers. I'm trying to, these are my balancing issues. And so when you have someone who is on the fence, whether they're going to move forward with the project or not, this is a great site. If we can't incentivize this site to be built, then eventually this will. It may happen 6 months, 9 months, a year from now. Our goal is, especially after the $105 million interchange project, is to show that we have construction going on and that we can move, the city's moving forward. This project was approved in December. We all thought that by January, they would be grading the property. And because there were other issues associated with neighboring tenants, it was delayed until March, and then COVID hits. And so our goal was to I will go anywhere, talk to anyone who is interested in putting in a business or even retention of a business in Grand Terrace. If there's anything that we can do to make sure that there are jobs available and it's generating sales tax, we will do that. So and let me apologize if there's any business that thinks that we are not approachable and that we can't provide options to you. We'll tell you if we can or cannot do something. I would love to advocate to have as many businesses open as possible. This was an opportunity for us to retain this project with all the work that we had put into the project.
Thank you. All right. We'll bring it to discussion for the council. What would you like to do with this item?
I have a raised hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Robles. I wasn't
I
looking
couldn't
at
even
the
find
panel.
it earlier
Go
anyways.
ahead. Councilmember Robles and then Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Whenever we run into the situation of sales tax sharing, I'm uncomfortable with it because we're supposed to get development so we can get sales tax. From a philosophy, a big company coming in, my understanding in all the forums I go to, businesses are looking for some kind of thing that we can do in lieu of RDA. I don't have a problem of waiving fees. But I think, the COVID excuse is kind of weak for a fast food restaurant because that's basically one of the few places you can go to on demand is a drive-through or Grubhub or all those other things. But what I would like to see is us have an active economic development policy tied with the money that we have. I think we need to have a look again at our bond proceeds from RDA and see how we can apply them. Because when this COVID first came, I was very concerned about the existing small businesses we had. And I didn't think I was making my concerns were not in line with what I think the city was doing. I agree that small businesses are the backbone of this community. The larger ones, because we're looking that there's active employment of people, small business people that tend to live in our community and they pay taxes. So I can be supportive of for this time, doing the waiving of the building fees, but I really would like to see us come back and revisit and have an economic development program that our staff operates. We don't depend on outside agencies to implement. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, and then Councilmember Allen. Mayor Pro Tem, please remember to unmute.
Motion to approve.
Right.
Actually, I'd like to move approval of the recommendation.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. Is the number of years that we offer this tax rebate negotiable?
Well, it is negotiable in terms of we have to come back with agreement, but the franchisee has indicated that based on the numbers, the first year being 1.2 million, he needs, in order to make the project work for him, he needs to be able to get to that 1.6 number. So, and once again, I think Councilperson Robles made a pretty good point. One of the things that this Taco Bell does, it generates jobs. They will have a minimum of 35 employees or 20 full-time equivalents. And then when you do an economic development tax rebate program like we did with Woody's, we would tie that in. If you don't maintain X number of employees, you're not going to get get this rebate. And that's one of the things that's in the report. It identifies a number of employees that will come as a part of the job.
And he thinks, and we think, or someone thinks it's going to take 5 years to reach that point. We can't say like in 2 years. I mean, because
I'm confident in the market share because of all the other data from the other restaurants.
Yeah.
If Taco Bell doesn't, okay, there isn't a major restaurant, including Woody's, Kaz Ramen, Thai Kitchen, that isn't generating that minimum of that low number of 1.2. The majority of them are all generating well above that 1.6 number.
Well, yeah, that's great and all, but I'm right here with Councilmember Robles. I mean, the purpose of us getting businesses in town is to reap the
Right.
revenue from the sales tax.
Okay, sir, and if you look at that chart there, with no generation, if Taco Bell goes away, you get nothing. What you have there is you have a $2.7 million property that's going to be paying you sales tax of $5,500. With sales tax, you're generating $12,000 a year. This is not a negative number. What I have here is a number that shows that even after you give the rebate, you're still going to generate positive revenue. So at the 1.2 million, after you were to do a sales tax rebate, you would generate $9,200 annually. Without that project, you get nothing. With 1.6 million generated, you will get your $21,500. So it's in no way shows a negative toward the city for doing the project.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Hussey and then Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Since before I even begin dating my wife and coming up here to Grand Terrace, that corner there's been an eyesore. It's been empty. I think it was actually used as overflow parking for some of the places over there. $35,000 to bring in a business that's going to also, I know we talked about the other small businesses, and that was why my question was for that CARE Act with that $50,000 to spread it equally. But, we look at the successes that we have had, like when Woody's has opened up, that little secondhand store was able to stay in business. Big and small is getting more customers. Antonio's Pizza right there, they're getting more customers from people going to Woody's. In the grocery outlet, you got more people going there, and then, the other businesses. I mean, just Kaz Ramen brings in a lot of business. So we get this triple effect when we bring in these businesses for other small businesses. So I think, I agree with Councilmember Robles. We should have more of a say on this bond thing to make sure, we maintain and we don't forget about our businesses that are in here, our small businesses, and we, have a good relationship with them and strive to keep them open, the doors open and stuff. But $35,000, I think, is a drop in the bucket to take care of that empty lot that's been there for decades, and then to bring in a business that generates a tax revenue. So that's just my comment.
All right, thank you, Councilmember.
Well, then I'd like to second what Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem and a second by Councilmember Hussey. Any further discussion on this item? Mayor Pro Tem says he's ready to vote. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen?
Yeah. Yes.
Councilmember Hussey?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor McNamara?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we'll move on to outdoor dining land use application program and economic incentive program to support local restaurants transition to outdoor dining. Director Steve Weiss.
Good evening, Mayor McNamara and council members. For the record, Steve Weiss, Director of Planning and Development Services. The item before you is all about outdoor dining. We have an urgency here. The last item was about business attraction. This is really about business retention for small businesses. So the goal, which has been a little bit modified, is to encourage well-designed temporary outdoor dining and shopping center parking lots needed to support local eateries. And you're seeing this all over the state right now. The background: early July, Governor Newsom ordered restaurants to halt indoor dining service, erasing any progress local businesses have made towards rebuilding their business since the initial shutdown in March. Governor Newsom also directed all 58 counties to close bars and shutter indoor restaurants, movie theaters, and wineries indefinitely. He also ordered 27 counties on the state's watch list to close gyms, churches, offices, hair salons, indoor malls, and other businesses effective immediately. And San Bernardino is on the watch list, and that number is actually up to 30 now. So here's the new normal. Local businesses were adapting to the new normal by operating at 50% capacity indoors, and they strive to comply with social distancing, 6 feet, and increased sanitary regulations. The recent closure of indoor dining may result in permanent closure of all local restaurants as takeout, and to live on takeout is probably not enough with all of their operating costs, and obviously staff will get laid off. So for outdoor dining, while local restaurants must close indoor operations, outdoor dining is still allowed and even extends to bars, brew pubs, breweries, if they are offering a sit-down and food. Outdoor dine-in meals, alcohol can only be sold in the same transaction as a meal. While some businesses are trying to provide outdoor dining within the area of their restaurant, many restaurants are expanding the outdoor dining option with the use of common areas and parking lots. And again, that's throughout the state. So where are we in Grand Terrace? We have 7 sit-down restaurants currently and 2 businesses that meet the definition of a bar or brew pub, so we have 9. If these businesses would like to expand their service or remain open via outdoor dining, they will need to file a no-cost land use permit, which is what and whenever a business comes in, they go through the land use permit to ensure that they are being operated safely. And it would be over the counter. We would make it very, very simple. And it grants permission to use a portion of a parking lot. So this needs to be allowed by the property owner, the shopping owner, and them. And what you'll see is in many areas, about 25% of the facilities are dedicated to this type of facility, or you'll see what they call parklets that are along some of the linear streets, and they do some really innovative ideas, and we'll show you some too. But they'll put in barriers, picket fences, all kinds of things, and definitely have some carpet or AstroTurf on the ground because the parking lots are way too hot to be in. The fee waiver, we're recommending that the city allocate a maximum of $2,500 a month as an economic development hardship per business for 2 months and waive the $97 land use application fee. This monthly assistance is fully reimbursed directly to the city through the County CARES Act allocation. And we do have a chart there too. Over-the-counter, so they must complete, how it works is they'll complete an over-the-counter City of Grand Terrace land use application. That won't change, and it's in compliance with public health, and it's part of the San Bernardino COVID-19 compliance business partnership program, so everything has to be up to code for monthly assistance. So this is an idea for a small dining area that could be daisy-chained if you have several restaurants. So you have to have some form of a barricade for safety, and definitely good shade, and as I said, ground cover, because these parking lots get super hot. So I've been around to a few cities right now, and I found some examples that are really good and some that aren't really so great. But this is what we would, when the owner or the restaurant owner comes in, we would work with them to get this over-the-counter approval. And if they don't have the resources, we'll help them get maps, things like that. So our recommendation is the outdoor dining program waiver of fees and distribution of CARES Act funding will benefit the community because it will allow Grand Terrace restaurants to operate during this pandemic, provide continued employment, and provide the opportunity for our restaurants to enjoy a dining experience outside, which has been severely restricted since the start of the pandemic. So at this point, this ends my remarks, but if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weiss. Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Allen, you have questions?
I do. Thanks, Mayor. So this is great. I'm glad we're able to do this, but now I also know that recently, whenever the governor of the state office announced this, they also said that there were other businesses that could open and do business if they could do it outdoors, and some of those were listed like gyms, barber shops, nail, hair salons, these sort of things. We do have some of those in this town. Have any of those expressed an interest of wanting to try to do business outside of, I don't know, a barber or a gym, some sort of a fitness studio we have?
I have talked to one operator of a hair salon, and I encouraged them to talk with public health and thought it was a very interesting idea. We would certainly be open to work with these people, provided they meet the public health guidelines. Cutting hair is probably a bit of a challenge in the 100-degree heat, but if they want to come in with a plan, that we would be more than happy to look at it. But I think they have to have sinks and things like that. So it's a little more complicated. The restaurants is more like just you come out of the restaurant and you sit down, and it's really quite a simple process. And these restaurants, they just depend on it.
Okay, well, yeah, well, that's great. I'm glad we're able to, and I don't know what the barber, how they would do it. I know we've got a lot of barbers in this shops in this town. I just wanted to ask about that. Thanks,
We would
Mr. Weiss.
absolutely be open to working with them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hussey.
Well, Mr. Wise, thank you for this, but I don't think we want the barbers to open up by the outside dining. I don't know about that. Anyway, because I know we have those, I think, 3 restaurants or 2 restaurants over there by where the grocery outlet is. How much parking space are we going to be giving these people, and can the landlord pretty much stop it if she said, or he said that they don't want to have outside dining? Does the city overrule that?
It's an excellent question, Councilmember Hussey. Well, that's really up to the owner of the center. So that would be something that the restaurant operators would work with the operator of the center and come up with a well thought out plan. Because I do know that is a bit of a challenge because they have them lined up and then it's an aisle. But there could be other options to it, or they could even work on a creative idea for the access too. I've seen worse. I mean, it would be a challenge, but it's possible.
Well, it's got to be creative thinking. I mean, besides the outside dining in the parking lot, make sure it's safe, when the cars are driving so nobody gets hit. And, and then the businesses, I mean, I feel for these businesses right now for everything that they've got to go through and the steps they take, and then they get other, roadblocks in front of them, and I'm just glad that the city's working with them. And, and I know you said that they'll come to the city and you guys are working on them. Are you guys actually going out to the businesses too and offering that services, letting them know so they're not fighting this fight by themselves, that the city's behind them 100% instead of them coming to City Hall?
Once the council authorizes us, we will provide outreach to all of the businesses, yes.
And so,
thank you.
And one of our overall goals is that we are not going to get involved in their business. They have an opportunity to say, yes, we'd like to do the program. And we would tell them, our primary goal is to make sure that whatever they do, one, they've got the proper permits from environmental health, and that they've gone through the county's COVID-19 compliance program, and that the patrons are safe if they're going to be dining in the street. Other than that, and we can offer the incentive, the economic incentive, we're not going to get involved in their business. We're here to assist. So it's not a city program where we're going to say, this is how you use the money. We're saying that if it's COVID-19, these are the categories that we have in this land use application permit. You do that. You give us we'll give you the reimbursement.
And probably, some of the obvious expenses that are really tough for small businesses are getting the shade structures, for example. There's a possibility of renting them. That might work out well. Maybe putting up barricades, and then that's really a lot of what these people need, and they need an area where you can sit comfortably.
Well, we actually have a business in this city by the tattoo parlor who actually has supply rentals and stuff. So maybe our businesses can work with him.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. And we'll reach out to that business. But we were also contacted by a resident who works for a business in Loma Linda who rents tents and tables. And you know, and he presented a program, and we said we can try a program, and we'll let the businesses make contact with you and work it out that way. So yes, so absolutely, there's some opportunities for local businesses or for regional businesses to partner with those local businesses to move the program forward.
Mayor Pro Tem?
In relation to the parking situation, I've seen it in the past where you can time the parking uses sufficient to be able to stagger what the parking demand's going to be for particular businesses, and then justify those fundings as a temporary parking condition for this emergency. And then as already been addressed, tents as well as air conditioning systems or fans, will those be something that could be included under the COVID funding?
Anything within there, like City Manager Duffy did mention, we're not going to tell them how to design this, but the typical, like, just to protect yourself, like shade and, you know, decent flooring is probably is the basic. And now, as far as the parking situation, we looked at that closely. I mean, really what the reality is because ever since COVID hit, there's a lot less people in the shopping centers, and that's why to have 75% of the spaces in that center is probably more than enough. And if it is a problem, again, we are here to work with these people. And of course, you can always just move it.
Yeah, and sir, we will have to validate that. For example, we're confident that tables and shade might be would be appropriate. Misters and ceiling fans, I don't know. And so we'd have to really kind of go through and really work with the state and with the federal government regarding the CARES Act funding. So what happens is the Treasury Department puts out a list of frequently asked questions, and we look at those questions, and sometimes they're pretty clear, and sometimes it's contradicted in other sections, but we'll make sure we follow through. But we're confident that tables, chairs, and tents, and barricades, and those things for outdoor dining, those are going to qualify. We'll go from there.
If Palm Springs can do it, then I can imagine we can.
Good point.
They use misters all the time, fans, the whole deal. So I would imagine there's a possibility. Thank you.
Misters might be shown to spread the COVID virus, though, so that would be a bad thing. My question to you is, if each of our restaurants took advantage of this program, what's the estimated amount of money that we would be using?
A shade under $50,000.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Allen.
Is this going to, I just wonder, is this going to impact the ADA access or the parking? No.
No, this would have to be, it would have to be designed with an accessible path of travel. And since you're in a parking lot, you know, getting out, you'll have all of the ADA spaces, and obviously to have the path of travel that's safe is absolutely essential. So there'll be ramps and whatever else is the case, but nobody will be going inside the restaurants except for the employees.
So the blue signs that are up in they'll be moved to another place if they want to use that for a place to sit down?
No, it's my understanding that based on what the state has indicated, you're not to do outdoor dining in handicap parking spaces.
Correct.
Oh,
And so we'd have to not have it right there.
Okay.
It's a case by case per center, for each center.
Okay, further questions? All right. Open it up to public comment. Any request to speak on this item?
We did receive a letter from our local Woody's Classic Grill from Mike Miller, who supports this item.
Okay.
Mr. Miller indicated that he's already purchased patio tables, chairs, easy-ups, umbrellas, as well as installing a misting system in an attempt to provide a cooler environment during the sweltering summer heat. But he did indicate that the city of Grand Terrace has always been a great partner and supporter of local businesses. He believes it's time that Woody's, as well as other full-service restaurants in Grand Terrace, need help from the city. They need help because a business has taken a 70% reduction in sales, but still have to pay 100% of their rent, electric bill, gas bill, insurance, and the list goes on and on. He's requesting any financial assistance that he can get to help improve the quality and safety of his outdoor dining for the community to enjoy. Woody's would utilize this assistance to purchase tents, more tables, chairs, and an evaporating cooling system. With the assistance of the City of Grand Terrace, he can create a beautiful and safe dining experience for all that would be proud of.
All right, thank you. And that was our last item for public comment. So we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion or further discussion. Councilmember Allen?
So I'll make that motion to approve the outdoor dining land use application program and waive fees associated with permit process and approve economic incentive program involving distribution of $50,000 in CARES Act funds to eligible local restaurants to transition to outdoor dining.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Allen for approval of staff recommendation and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor McNabo?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. All right, our next item is the authorization and use of electronic records and signatures. City Clerk Deborah Thomas. And Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to let you carry us through if I'm not back in 2 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. The item before you this evening is an authorization and use of electronic records and signatures. Under our 2020 vision statement, this item ensures our physical viability by exploring creative means to provide services and engage in proactive communication by utilizing technology and web-based tools to disseminate information. Recent amendments to the Uniform Electronic Transaction Act, as well as increasing usage of electronic records and signatures, has made it possible for parties to rely upon the UETA and impose policies and procedures regarding electronic records and signatures in their organizations. Benefits of allowing electronic signatures include reduced time, paper and costs associated with transmitting and approving physical documents, improved customer service, and convenience to those performing transactions with the city, enhanced records management, best practices, and the creating of an easily accessible audit trail of when documents are modified and signed. The focus of the UETA is to empower parties to utilize electronic records and signatures to the fullest extent possible while still maintaining the security and consistency of traditional records and signatures. The proposed resolution and policy allows for the use of electronic records and signatures for any internal or external city business and in any transaction or communication in which the parties have agreed to the use of electronic records and signatures. The policy allows for two forms of electronic signatures. The first option is the electronic signature, and it is defined in the statute as an electronic sound, symbol, or process attached to or logically associated with an electronic record and executed or adopted by a person with the intent to sign the electronic record. This is the simpler signature option available under the UETA. The form of signature is as defined as an electronic this form of signature is defined as an electronic, that's a digital signature, an electronic identifier created by computer, intended by the party using it to have the same force and effect as the use of a manual signature. A digital signature must conform to the requirements of the California Secretary of State and must satisfy the following elements. It is unique to the person using it. It is capable of verification. It is under the sole control of the person using it. It is linked to data in such a manner that if the data is changed, the digital signature is invalidated. It conforms to regulations adopted by the Secretary of State. Any use of the electronic records, electronic signatures, and digital signatures by the city shall be in accordance with all applicable laws and city administrative policies and procedures, as may be amended from time to time by the city manager. This policy does not supersede any laws that require a handwritten signature, nor does it limit the right or option of the city to conduct any business or transaction on paper or in non-electronic form. Digital signatures, like handwritten signatures, are unique to each signer. digital signature solution providers follow a specific protocol called public key cryptography, which is an acceptable technology for use by public entities in California. When a signer electronically signs a document, the signature is created using the signer's private key, which is always securely kept by the signer. The city can balance the ease of use of electronic signatures against the increased security of the digital signature and may make this decision per each individual agreement. Therefore, it is staff recommendation that the City Council adopt the resolution, and it also has an attached policy that's been spelled out in their staff report as well. At this time, that's the end of my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Any questions of staff at this time? All right, seeing none, I will open it up to public comment. Are there requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
So we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
I'll make the motion.
All right, motion by Councilmember Allen.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Robles. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey,
Yes.
Councilmember Robles,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
and Mayor McNabo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 10, which is the fiscal year 2019-2020 year-end budget update and a fiscal year 2020-2021 proposed budget provision. Assistant City Manager Cynthia Fortune.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. The staff report before you is our budget updates for fiscal years 29-20 and 2020-21. Next slide, please. Yeah, this staff report supports our 2030 vision and goals, ensuring our fiscal solvency, maintaining public safety, promoting economic development, develop and implement successful partnerships, and engage in proactive communication. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this report is to provide revenue and expense updates for the prior year, which is of course the one that just concluded, fiscal year 29-20, to review and approve the revised current year budget, and to review and approve any proposed appropriations in the current year budget of fiscal year 2020-21. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about last year, the year that just concluded, fiscal year 2019-20. Next slide, please. So staff at this point has received the bulk of the general fund revenues. So they have been reviewed and vetted. And based on what we've received to date, as council is aware, we will continue to be receiving revenues till the end of August. We have determined that in relation to the bond defeasance, where we had originally estimated only receiving $250,000, we actually received all of the bond defeasance proceeds last current year of $500,000. We've also determined that several properties sold in fiscal year 2016-17, whose increase in value did not get onto the tax roll actually until January of 2019. So it was a little too late for us to be able to roll that into our projections. And that the increase in net taxable value from 1819 to 1920 totaled $84 million, which actually increased our property tax receipts by $150,000. So technically, in property tax receipts last year, we actually received $619,000 more than what we expected. Next slide, please. So this is the summary of what our general fund revenues are. And that third column that I had highlighted, this was the June 2020 projection that we had provided you, and which we were expecting, if you look at that bottom line, 5.4 million. If you look at the next column next to it, year to date, we already have 5.9. So well, we've actually received more than we've originally projected. So based on that, we revised our projections. So we are actually projecting that we're going to get a little over 6 million in 1920. And so our adjustments, as you can see, we're projecting an increase of 623. Again, 619 of that is from property taxes alone. Next slide, please. So with the expense, we are not changing, we are not varying our June 2020 year projection of almost 5.8 million. The only adjustment we are doing is that additional 15,000 because our public works director had moved on to another city, and this were his accrued balances payouts. So we are projecting 5.8 million in expenditures. Next slide, please. That being said, again, from our original projection, that third column in the middle of where we thought we were going to be using a fund balance of 357,000 and change, we are now projecting, actually adding to the fund balance 250. So we're actually going to be 250 to the good. So that is our projection for fiscal year 1920. Next slide, please. So when we go now to fiscal year 2020-21, because now that we've reviewed that, we have to look at our current budget. Next slide, please. So in light of that additional property tax revenues that we did receive in 29-20, again, over 600,000, city staff requested property tax consultant HDL to provide revised property tax projections. So based on the projections they provided, we are presenting revised 2021 revenue appropriations based on the information we received from HDL. Next slide, please. So we are revising our adopted revenue budget of 5.8 million. We're actually increasing it by almost 300,000. And again, the bulk coming from property taxes. As you can see, the property tax adopted budget of 1.9, HDL is conservative. So what we're trying to add there is based on what our actuals were, a 2% increase, and that will give us 2 million. And they are proposing RPTTF receipts of almost 1.8 million. And granted that we received 1.9 in the prior year, they're trying to be conservative to let us know that supplementary tax or transfer taxes may not come in on a timely basis this year, because if you recall, they were thinking that this is the year when property taxes might be delayed. So this is why it's a little less. So then next slide, please. When we go to general fund expense, we're not revising that expense budget, still leaving it at 5.9. But now with that projected $300,000 increase in revenue, next slide, please. So for this current year, based on that, we are expecting, again, not to use 90,000 of fund balance as we had originally requested. We're actually going to be now 210 to the good. So that being said, next slide, please. City staff is proposing current year budget adjustments. Next slide, please. So for 2021, again, for revenue, we are asking the approval to revise the original adopted budget to a revised budget, increasing it by the 301,000. Next slide, please. And the increase in revenue will just, the budget appropriations will more closely project expected property tax and other revenue receipts. And then in relation to expenditure appropriations, next slide, please. City staff is requesting the following. Again, at the current year, we are projecting 210,000 to the good. We are requesting that the code enforcement specialist who we originally brought from a 40-hour work week to a 20-hour work week be returned to that for public safety. We are asking to refund one maintenance worker position. because the loss of two, which we laid off two from part of our revenue enhancement and expenditure reduction plan. We are requesting to refund the management analyst position and reclass it to that of a senior accountant. And we are also reclassing the budget officer position to a finance accounting manager position. For the finance department positions, I am requesting that because what I would like is to have staff to actually closely monitor all our revenue receipts. If we got it, to compare it to last month, to compare it to last year, if there's a variance, what is the cost of the variance? Deal with the county or the other government entities that we received this from. Unfortunately, because of we had reduced the staff, by the time we actually look at it, several months have come. And as we know, when we even do our projections, normally we're working on not up-to-date information as best as we can. And then if you would like Mr. Weiss to talk about the Planning Development Services and Public Works positions, he will be more than happy to. We did provide the detail in the staff report as to what these positions would be doing. So then I will finish my presentation. If you have any questions, we can answer them then. So if we move to the next slide. So this is just showing a summary, as you can see, of the 29-20 year-end projections, and I highlighted it at 250. And the proposed 2021, we are projecting a year-end balance of 210 and proposing additional positions. And this is what the net surplus would be for both years. Next slide, please. And again, the general fund proposed expenditures will provide the city the ability to effectively continue efficient public services and minimize any disruption in services to the community. Next slide, please. So again, it's just a summary of showing you that of the 2019-20 surplus 2021. So the total projected fund balances of both years is actually, a little over 450,000. We are requesting that 182,000 of that be approved. Yes, Councilmember Hussey, you have a question?
Mayor Pro Tem had his hand up earlier. I don't think
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Hussey could see it. So, Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a question at this point, or did you want to hold till the end?
No, I'll hold. I'd like to make a motion, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Councilmember Hussey.
Yeah, I had a question. On the fiscal year 2019 and 2020, you had a surplus of 250,000, and then for 2020 and 2021, that's when you're asking for the additional staff. On that 250,000, can that money be used to put into our rainy day fund and also be paid to pay for our additional 30-hour sheriffs? I mean, I don't know what that's earmarked for.
Yes, Councilmember Hussey, it can. So if you look at the slide in relation to the remainder, if City Council were to approve the 182,000, there will roughly be $278,000 that are left. We can use that to fall into fund balance, and that will fall to the rainy day fund. Or we can return to council with proposed programs or activities, such as the return of the 30-hour additional deputy. And we are estimating that at $130,000 a year.
With the money going back into our rainy day fund that we have to use, how close are we to hitting that healthy mark?
Well, it is good that you asked. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So we actually updated our general fund long-term financial performance chart. And as Mr. Duffy already knows this by heart, healthy is when revenues exceed expenditures. We're going to continue to show growth year over year, and the city maintains a two-month reserve. Now, granted, we're not using reserves last year and this year. We're already maintaining that rainy day fund, and we're actually increasing it So 250 last year, 210 this year, we're actually adding, assuming, nothing gets appropriated, 460. But even if we were to, if city council were to approve the 182,000 in appropriations and the 130,000 for the return of the additional, the 30-hour deputy, we will still have funds that will still go into the rainy day fund, and we will still maintain that healthy mark.
Thank you.
Councilmember Allen.
Ms. Fortune, I remember a few weeks ago at one of the meetings that we were discussing and how the property taxes had been, the governor had allowed the property taxes for next year to be delayed a year, and that if I understand it right, and if I don't, I'm sure that you'll help me understand it right. And then that would cause, I guess it's a delay in the penalty to pay the taxes, so people have up to a year extension, and there was we were concerned about that affecting our budget next year. Are we still concerned with that?
And I will have to assume at this time that these are assumptions that HDL took into consideration. Because if we got 1.9 million in our PTTF last year, I would like to think that their 2021 assumption should have been over 2 million. Yet they actually put it back to 1.7. Yeah, so they are being very conservative. So that, and they did say that they think that sales of properties, even if it would occur by the time it was put on the tax roll, it might be delayed.
Okay, thank you.
Just to complete the report, next slide, please. If City Council had not approved the revenue enhancement and expenditure reduction plan, next slide, please. These are the numbers that we would have seen if we had not reduced staff. In 1920, we would have still had the surplus, not the 250, but 200,000. And in the current year, if we didn't do any staff reductions and we continued the 30-hour deputy, we would be 369 in the hole. That's basically mostly the staff reduction. But actually, next slide, please. That concludes my report. The city manager and I will be happy to answer any more questions City Council may have.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions at this time? Mayor Pro Tem? Oh, Councilmember Hussey?
No, I just like to thank Ms. Fortune and her staff and Mr. Duffy for the leadership and all they've done for this work and stuff. And thank my fellow council members for us, too, because there's a team effort and I'm glad that we're finally getting that we can get above that healthy mark. I know we've been trying for this for a long time, and I think we're pretty good at being dual diligent for the citizens and being conservative. So I just want to thank our staff for all the work they do.
Okay. We'll open it up to public comment if there is any.
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back. Mayor Pro Tem?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the money portion of this thing, but I'd like to hold on the staff ads. So I'm not exactly sure how to do that. I'd like the city attorney to weigh in on that.
Mayor Pro Tem, to clarify, you want to hold off on what exactly? The staffing?
I would like to approve the budget, the updated budget, but I would like to hold off on any staff ads for the next 3 months at least.
So as I understand the agenda recommendation, if you wanted to proceed in that matter, you could proceed with recommendation number 1, receive and file the fiscal year 2019-20 year-end report, and number 2, review and approve the revised fiscal year 2021 budget with the proposed adjustments. but not proceed with recommendation number 3, which is approve the requested revenue and expense appropriations at this time.
So moved.
I'll second that.
I'm not clear.
Okay, the motion was to receive and file the year-end report, to review and approve the revised budget with the proposed adjustments, but to hold off on the bringing back of staff.
The 4 staff recommendations?
Yes.
Oh.
Was
Councilmember Hussey.
that the budget analyst, code enforcement, and was that for the additional sheriff too?
Well, actually, what's in the staff report is not the sheriff. It is the code enforcement reinstatement to 40 hours. It is bringing back 1 maintenance worker. And it is bringing back a finance accountant.
Thank you.
Councilmember Allen?
So I really respect everything our staff has done here. And along with that respect, I have to trust and have faith in them that they know what they need. And I know our city, as much as our city needs real good quality, and we have it, fire protection and police protection, they also need the rest of the staff to make the rest of the city function. And so I would make an alternate motion that we, for all 3, receive and file the budget and approve the revised budget, and also to rehire the recommended staff positions.
I'll second that motion for consideration, but ask that you stipulate that we come back in 6 months to review.
I'll agree with that we come back and review in 6 months.
Okay, so I'll take the alternate motion first, which is to move staff recommendation, but to come back in 6 months to review. And the motion was made by Councilmember Allen and seconded by me. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
No.
Mayor McNamara?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have requests for future agenda items by the council, and pursuant to city council policy, if council member is interested in an item that will require more than 1 hour of staff time to complete, the item will be agendized to ask if time should be spent on preparing the report. And so we will only look at the 3 items that are on our agenda tonight and no others. The first being a consideration of whether a planning commission alternate appointment makes sense. I'm not necessarily saying we should rush this back, but my motion is that we at least have a discussion about whether it makes sense to appoint alternates to our planning commission.
I'll second that. Always open for a discussion.
Okay, please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
No.
Mayor McNamara?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, the next item is traffic control devices, and that is requested by Councilmember Jeff Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. Recently, some of the residents over near the west side of town have complained, and this isn't anything new. They've complained off and on for years about truck traffic, trucks getting lost in that neighborhood, and I feel for them, and I sympathize and empathize. I live over right off of Mount Vernon, near the Mount Vernon slope, and there are trucks daily, constantly coming up that hill and going down Mount Vernon. There's dozens of residences who face Mount Vernon Road and Barton Road that have to, deal with the truck traffic. And also, I understand that there's now, quite some time now, there's been truck traffic using observation to get over to the High Grove area where the warehouses are over there. And so I just think that we could do a better job of controlling the truck traffic and trying to prevent some of the trucks that some of the residents say get lost in their neighborhoods with signage or other types of traffic control devices that are permanently attached to the ground.
Councilmember Hussey?
I also think we could work better with Colton, or get Colton to be more proactive on the streets that border, like on the slope coming up, how they need to control the traffic, truck traffic coming up that slope into Grand Terrace.
Okay, so that's what would come back for us for discussion. And that is your motion. So you're not necessarily, you're saying let's have a discussion about the kind of devices that might make sense and whether we should look further in detail at them?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Councilmember Hussey?
Second.
All right, please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
No,
Mayor McNamara?
because I think I'm sorry, I think we were going to do some sort of a circulation study.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry, motion passes.
All right, then the third one tonight for consideration of coming back for discussion is a three-way stop sign at the intersection of Canal and Newport. And that is also requested by Councilmember Allen.
And I put that on there because this seems to be an area that, for two reasons. Number one, there's been, I've witnessed several accidents there. It's a tricky curve, and it's a very wide road, and people tend to get on that road, and it's a long straight stretch, and then they got that tricky curve in there, and I've seen cars end up over in that field, spun out, and things like that. So that's the first reason. But the second thing is that that's one of the access points that trucks use that go into neighborhoods where they don't belong. And so that would be one area where we could stop the truck, and the truck would have driver would have an opportunity to realize that's not the direction I need to go the other direction. So it's just a discussion to try to alleviate the concerns those residents over there have, help them out. Thank you.
Are we still on truck traffic control devices?
No, the third one is a three-way stop sign at the intersection of Canal and Newport, and Councilmember Allen is suggesting that that's part of the truck traffic control as well.
Well, I would just, I approve these things because I feel, out of respect of the council members' concerns, but I think we're getting into a lot of areas that maybe it'd be okay if staff would say this is part of our circulation plan study. If we bring to the table things that are already being incorporated, because I know in the past there's been some items that Councilmember Allen has brought, and they're already being looked at staff. So, I just hate creating a lot of duplicate work. But I'll go along with it.
I understand your point, Councilmember Robles, and I think that was the point of Mayor Pro Tem. What I would ask of staff is if there are any of these that come forward and we approve them for discussion, would you come back and let us know if they were part of a larger discussion?
Absolutely. Part of the whole goal here is to talk about how we are addressing the particular issue. So when we bring this item back to you, we would talk to you about what's the current status in the city, what we're currently doing, and then we'd tell you this is what needs to be done if we want to, if it's a new project. But certainly we would tell you where our base is right now on any project.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion for the third item.
Is this something that is being studied? I mean, is this something that's in a circulation study that is already being considered?
No, it isn't, but there is a really simple process in order for this to happen. The city engineer would simply go out and do an engineering study, to determine whether it meets, it does a warrant to determine whether it meets meets the qualification for a three-way stop.
Okay.
And then based on this recommendation, we'd come back to the council, we'd say it does meet that or it doesn't meet that.
Okay,
And we would explain that as part of the process of bringing this item back.
okay. All right, I'll second it for the discussion. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Hussey?
Yes.
Councilmember Robles?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
No.
Mayor McNabo?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Okay, City Manager Communications, Mr. Duffy.
Mayor, I don't have anything tonight.
I don't think you could beat the good news that you brought us for the budget, so excellent. And we have no closed sessions tonight, so we will adjourn. And remember that we're closing in memory of Jesse David Rodriguez, and that is Councilmember Sylvia Robles' brother. Please remember the family in your thoughts and prayers. The next regular City Council meeting will be held on Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on future agenda must be made in writing and submitting to the City Clerk's office, and the request will be processed in accordance with council procedures. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.